Senku is back. Dr. Stone is back with New World, a new season, season 3 technically of the series, and I could not be more excited. I have always been pretty clear to people that I don't know why I love the show so much. Like, I can never put it into words, but yes, really happy to see the series come back. I did watch the movie. I really enjoyed the injection of energy that Ryuusui gives, but I don't think this series is anywhere lacking in energy, but he's definitely a different mix to the whole thing. But yeah, this is my thoughts on the first episode of the new season of Dr. Stone New World, so let's jump right into it. For those that have never watched Dr. Stone, I don't know why you haven't, it essentially opens up where our modern times, some point this beam of light appears, and it turns everybody into stone, and then cut forward thousands of years, and we have Senku just wakes up from this stone form, breaks out of it, and then decides at that point, being a genius, being pretty much a child genius, that he wants to pretty much rebuild the world. It's taken us millions of years in order to get to the point that we are now, and with all that knowledge that we have built is now inside of his head, he feels like he can get him back to modern times faster, and that becomes his challenge, and so he concocts a way to be able to restore people from stone form, meets different people that actually recovered quicker, and they've kind of built civilizations based on that, and then we're jumping forward to the current season of New World, where they're seeking to go overseas, and actually go to where the beam originated and find out what turned mankind into stone. They're gonna need a ship though, and so they have to build a ship, put it together, find fuel, because he can't just leave it at just being a ship. Not just a random ship with sails on it. He's gotta do something else, so they gotta find oil. And that's kind of where we're at right now. The other kind of thing they get into, which I think is probably where I had the most enjoyment out of this episode, is really getting into the thought process of why mankind hasn't been able to multiply as much as it has before, and that's obviously because of the lack of food. As we get this little brief moment where Ryuusui is mocking the fact that he had to eat fish. He hates fish and he had to eat nothing but fish, and he makes a passing comment about how we got you some goat meat, everything's great now, what do you think of that? And everybody starts crying because they've always had to live off of fish because they haven't had other resources to build off of, and that has sort of made the village itself not flourish. And so they have to find a way, which, yes, wheat. Getting wheat and grain in order to make bread. And yes, that's kind of where they get into with the later parts of this, which, like I said earlier, is getting into my ultimate thoughts of this episode. As per usual, love the series, love it to death. It's going to be difficult for me not to, merge the movie in with this episode, my thoughts. But yes, like I said, really enjoyed the introduction of Ryuusui and his nature of greed, which they kind of get into a little bit more in this episode, and the idea that Ryuusui isn't necessarily just full of greed. Senku sort of thinks that he's a type of person that doesn't want to give up on anything, whether it be for himself or other people. And so when he does, again, make this really passing comment about how this village eats nothing but fish, and it's terrible, and it's so much better that you now have this other meat, everybody starts being sorrowful, like, yay, now we won't starve again. Nobody will starve like it has before. And Kohaku sort of confirms that by saying, yeah, before I was born, apparently the village used to be a lot bigger, but then they went through this period of time where they were getting bad fish or lack of fish. And so people starved, and the population of the village shrunk. That's why they've never built, over these thousands of years, they haven't built this massive town. It's because they've always been relying on just the fish. And so this again brings up the question mark of, well, why don't we get them a source of food? Agriculture. That is what sort of built mankind, is agriculture. We moved to growing, fruits and vegetables, and that allowed the population to grow because everybody had food, rather than just relying on what they can hunt, which is obviously limited. And I like how Ryuusui sees this and goes, all right, we're gonna look for wheat. His ultimate goal is he wants to sail the seas, he wants to go out and venture, he wants everything, and the moment that he sees other people in trouble, he doesn't turn to greed in the idea of, well, that's not my problem because I'm seeking this. No. Yes, under the guise of agriculture can mean money and he can make more money. No, in truth, he actually wants to help the people. So they're putting aside looking for oil for the sake of finding wheat, which, yes, does play into Senku's plan. He does need this in order for them to travel on the seas for a long time. They need a source of food for that travel. But again, at its heart, it is the idea of, let's help mankind grow. And so it's serving multiple purposes, and I almost love how creative the writer is on injecting that, because it's like three fronts here. One, it's this village. Yes, it's the village that has starved before because they didn't have fish. Then it's the idea of, yes, they're going to be traveling overseas, so they're going to need this in order to survive. And then third is, oh yeah, they have this massive buildup of people that they can't bring and unstone because there's no food. So it injects this massive population to be restored. It injects this massive population that's able to now build, and it gives them the ability to travel. So it's like multiple fronts at this one thing. Wheat, simple thing of wheat, thus opens up the door to multiple options here. And I like how they injected Taiju into it as well. He's kind of the brawny guy that is just kind of very single-mindedly, but he sees this as a thing that can actually help people. And the way he puts it is that I've lost my family. They died before this whole thing happened. I can't bring them back. But seeing somebody weeping over finding his father in stone form, but he can't bring him back, he's like, but I can bring them back. So it kind of plays into Taiju as well. It's a really, really good episode. I think the only thing that's really negative in this episode is that it spent a little bit too much time recapping, which was especially bothersome for me because I just watched the movie, and so I'm like, I don't need to see recaps. It didn't spend too much time into it. I mean, for like your typical shonen show would be like very heavy on it. This one just kind of dabbled in here and there, gave like these little brief, 5-second clips talking about what's happened in the past. But everything else in this episode was just so beautifully done. Like I said, it just kind of crafted in this evolution of the village, the people, the stone formed, and the future travels. Which really at this point makes me wonder if they're ever going to get to actually traveling in the seas. But yeah, like the other thing they're clearly getting into here is the oil, which I hate the Minecraft shots. I just don't like the Minecraft shots. It's fine, but at the same time, I just don't care for it. But them trying to find the oil, which is going to help them, obviously, for Senku's attachment that he's going to put on the boat, it seems. Because again, like I said, you can't just leave it simply as a ship with sails. So I'm assuming that probably at the next episode, they'll probably find that oil and kind of move forward. It was kind of interesting to see that they did bring into effect this idea of geographical things changing. I think that was in the movie, and this idea that, yes, they're flying above, they're able to see everything, but things have shifted around a lot. So he's going to have to figure out where exactly this one oil field went to. And that all kind of wraps up with, yes, the trying to make bread. Senku's got all this knowledge in his head, but he's not a good cook, which is kind of weird. You would think about it. I mean, I guess, yes, technically cooking sort of takes a certain touch. But if he knows the science behind it, why would he have trouble cooking? It's kind of one of those things of like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, Senku has the knowledge of a lot of things and he pulls it off perfectly. There hasn't really been too many times where it's a lot of trial and error. He just kind of goes, oh, I know how this works. Let's put it into practice, and it happens. Why wouldn't that be the same for cooking? But I don't know, it makes it funny that Senku is as smart as he is, but he's a terrible cook. Every person, no matter how perfect they seem, has to have one flaw, and his is cooking. It's typically the waifu characters that are like that. They're beautiful, they do everything perfect, but they can't cook. Senku's the waifu character that can't cook. But no, that all leads to them saying that they're going to have to find a chef. They have to look through all the bodies, stone forms, to find somebody that is a chef. We'll see who it ends up being. That kind of leads into like one of the funnier aspects of this series, that's sort of the suspension of disbelief. And I noticed that in the movie when they're like, okay, we need somebody that can captain the ship. So they immediately go to this one island and they're just looking through all these bodies and they just happen to find Ryuusui, who is somebody that somebody else knows. Like, it's always like, of all the bodies that kind of get shifted around in the ocean over those thousands of years, we happen to find this person. And they'll probably find a chef that somebody knows. It's always kind of been that funny oddity that they always run into with this series. And it makes sense because a lot of people kind of flowed on the same flow to one location. And so they obviously know each other. That's why so many of these people, including Senku and his friends from his school, were all in the same location. But it's still kind of funny that they just happen to, let's dig up here. We found Ryuusui. And they're going to go, okay, let's dig up over here. And we find somebody that Ryuusui knows or something like that. The OP was interesting. I think that's the only place where I have a sort of concern in the idea that we're just going to introduce another faction for this season. I almost feel like they need to stop introducing factions over and over again, because Stone War was fine. It was a faction that seen things differently than what Senku did. It was an anti-science versus science. And I feel like, I trust the writer that whatever faction they're going to introduce is going to be interesting, but it's still that there's a side of me that's like, you're getting too many characters. Like, you're getting to too many character syndrome. Focus on what you have. Now, it could be a Bungo Stray Dog situation where they keep introducing characters and they're all phenomenal. But I've already kind of noticed that a lot of the characters they've introduced in the past, especially with Stone War, are characters that don't really have too much going for them. So I hope that this writer doesn't get too focused on that. Now, it's an inevitability because, again, Senku wants to restore everybody from Stone. Obviously, getting this wheat is going to allow them to restore a lot of people. But I still want the focus to be on the core characters they already have established and build on them. But, again, I'll just trust the writer. But yeah, solid episode. Super happy for Taiju. Taiju best bro. He works super hard, gets things done, does science without thinking about it. He's a cool dude. Gets to become the food captain or something like that? Food king. He gets to be the food king. But we'll see where it goes from here. But that's my thoughts on Dr. Stone, New World. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode, if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you got my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, and a super thanks button down below. Greatly appreciate what it does. And thanks to all the new members that came to the channel. We had a live stream last night, and it was absolutely fantastic. The support just had me overwhelmed. So many great people that support this channel and keep me doing what I'm doing. And I'm so happy that my content has brought you entertainment. And with all that said, y'all take care.